So a live look from inside the King County election headquarters in Renton right now. Pretty quiet as election workers head out to go pick up the ballots from the boxes as those boxes close in this November election. Thanks for being with us for this special election show. I'm Greg Copeland.
And I'm Joyce Taylor. Good evening. We're going to be tracking election results live as they start to drop in the next couple of minutes. Tonight, there are more than 600 races and issues in Western Washington alone.
Everything from the city council to multi-million-dollar school bonds to a controversial initiative in Pierce County that aims to strengthen renters' rights.
In King County, 7 out of 9 Seattle City Council seats are on the ballot this election, and that means the makeup of council politics in the city is going to change.
The real question tonight, how much? That is a question we'll be asking of our guest here in just a minute. First, though, we're going to take a look at some of those seats, all of them actually. 4 of those seats are open. Those are districts 1, 3, 4, and 5 after the incumbents decided to not run for another term. Here are the 14 candidates who are running tonight. Let's zoom into those individual districts. District 1, as I mentioned, that's the open seat. Lisa Herbold is not running again. The 2 candidates are Maren Costa and Rob Saka. Saka is an attorney and served on Mayor Bruce Harrell's Seattle Police Chief Search Committee. His priorities include public safety, homelessness, and housing, among others. Costa is a former design leader for Amazon and Microsoft and is a climate activist. Her priorities include public safety, homelessness, and green economic policies. District 2, Tammy Morales is one of the 3 current city council members who are seeking re-election. Voters elected Morales to the city council in 2019. Her priorities for another term include community safety, affordable housing, and environmental issues. Her challenger is Tanya Wu. Wu's family owns a hotel in the Chinatown International District. She says she wants to, quote, change bad city policies. Her priorities include, again, homelessness, housing, and public safety.
District 3 is another open seat after current progressive council member Shama Sawant decided not to seek re-election. The 2 candidates are Joy Hollingsworth and Alex Hudson. This will be a very interesting race to watch tonight after the 2 tied in the August primary. Hollingsworth is part of the Food Access Network team at Northwest Harvest. Her priorities include reducing property and violent crimes and expanding mental health services. Hudson leads a transit and transportation advocacy nonprofit. Her priorities include housing and homelessness, transportation, and small business support. District 4, also an open seat after Councilmember Alex Peterson decided not to run again. The 2 candidates vying for this seat, Ron Davis and Maritza Rivera. Davis is a transit advocate and environmental activist. His priorities include public safety, housing, homelessness, transportation, and workers' rights. Rivera is the city's deputy director of the Department of Arts and Culture. She also served in the White House as President Clinton's Hispanic liaison. Her top priority is public safety.
Let's get to District 5, also an open seat. Deborah Juarez decided not to seek re-election there. Kathy Moore is a former King County Superior Court judge. Her priorities include, again, public safety, ending cycles of addiction, and affordable housing. Her opponent is Christiana Obi-Sumner. They are a former co-chair of the Seattle Renters Commission. Their priorities include affordable housing, health and human services, and infrastructure gaps. Then District 6, incumbent Dan Strauss is taking on Pete Hanning. Strauss's priorities include public safety, homelessness, housing. Hanning is currently the executive director of the Fremont Chamber of Commerce. His priorities include homelessness, housing, public safety, and small business support.
District number 7 now, current council member Andrew Lewis facing Bob Kettle. Lewis's priorities include housing, homelessness, public safety, climate change. Kettle is a former naval officer and serves on the Queen Anne Community Council Board. His priorities include public safety, homelessness, universal pre-K, and expanding community colleges. We want to bring in Seattle University Professor Patrick Shetmer, who is an expert in Seattle City Council politics.
Good to have you in tonight.
Very good to have you.
We've been able to talk a little bit about what's going on in Seattle politics and where things might go tonight. We mentioned a lot of the same priorities over and over and over again. Which of those districts are you watching tonight?
I'm going to be paying closest attention probably to District 1 and District 3. I think those are really competitive races for different reasons. Obviously, Joy and Alex, and they're in District 3. They were neck and neck in the primary, so it's going to be really a question of who's able to consolidate support where and what turnout in the district is going to look like.
Either way, in that district, what is not there will not be Shama Sawant, and that is
Yes.
maybe one of the biggest things in this election is that somebody who is so polarizing for the city council, that will not be. Do you see that being an issue with any of the other candidates?
I don't think that any of the other candidates are going to be able to move the Overton window in the same way that Sawant is able to, or wasn't even inclined to. She had a very different style of politics, even than the other members of the council that currently serve. And I don't really see anyone adopting her same style of politics, even if they might see themselves as picking up some of the issues that she championed on the council.
When you look at the entire landscape and you consider the changing of the tide with so many open seats and new faces coming to the council, what do you think that means for the city of Seattle as we move forward with such a different makeup?
Well, I think part of the question that we're going to see answered over the next months and next year or two is if we're going to see the Seattle process reassert itself.
Described as how, the Seattle process?
The emphasis that we have historically placed in Seattle politics on collegiality and compromise, consensus building, which tends to lead to really slow-moving politics. The Seattle process, I think, has been challenged a little bit over the last few years as progressives have made attempts to push forward with greater speed than we usually see in Seattle politics on issues of importance, which I think in part reflects some of the impatience voters are getting about the changes they see in Seattle and the changes they want to see made in Seattle. But that same sort of contentiousness also builds up a lot of aggressiveness in politics, which I think is partly explains why we've had so many retirements coming in, or decisions not to seek re-election in this current cycle.
It's been very politics in general has been very polarizing the past several years.
Indeed,
and
it has.
Seattle's no exception to that.
Correct.
I think we do have some results that are starting to come in for King County. Are we starting with the council races?
There they are right there.
There we are, Seattle City Council District number 1. Let's look at the results if we have them. So this is one of the races you said you were watching very
Indeed.
closely. This is 54% of the vote in with Saco with 59% and Marn Costa 41%.
And that's a big difference from the primary, which was, I think it was 33 to 24 for Costa. And you mentioned because that was maybe turnout was so low that those numbers were not going to continue into the general.
Yeah, I mean, the big question I think in District 1 was the candidate who had the third largest chunk of votes, Phil Tavel. If we look at where his support was coming from, we would expect it to be lining up more behind Saka. But he endorsed Costa early on after the primary itself. So the question that I had was, are we going to see him be able to deliver his supporters to where he wanted it to go, or were they going to vote the way their issues were leading them?
In your mind, what's the biggest difference between these two candidates? What are people voting for and against here?
I think in part it is on how they feel about security and safety in the city, and I think partly it's also on personality. I think that Saka has a much more aggressive style of politics than Costa, and I think that could be something that people in West Seattle might want if they're not feeling like they're getting heard as clearly as they want.
We want to go to District 2, which covers the Beacon Hill, Chinatown International District and the Rainier Beach neighborhoods. And Tanya Wu is leading so far. Her challenger is Tammy Morales. Now, this is with 48% of the vote in, and we talked earlier, voter turnout is going to make a big difference in this race, don't you think?
It's definitely going to make a big difference in the race. The primaries, we only had around 30 to 35, 36%, depending on the district that you're talking about. And that means a lot of people were just setting out the primary entirely. When you're adding in another, 20, 30,000 voters, you have to see where they're coming from to see which way they're going to shift the election. In
this race, why do you think voter turnout is more of a key relative to some of the other races? Is it because it's the international district, for example?
Yeah, I mean, District 2 is the most racially and ethnically diverse district in the city of Seattle. And so you have a lot a more diverse set of coalitions that you're trying to turn out. And you have to see exactly who's going to be showing up to get an idea whose coalition is going to be able to put them over the top.
I mean, it's early, but it was a 10-point lead for Morales in the primary over Wu. If this holds up, I mean, theoretically, when you're looking at the numbers, it's possible we could have 8 new city council members at the end of this. Probably, that maybe not probable, but it's possible if everybody
possible.
takes over. We'll get to more on that in a little bit.
That would be remarkable
Right.
if it happens.
Just that it's possible is saying something. Let's get to District 3 right now and take a look at, well, it takes a second for the graphics to move forward. That is Joy Hollingsworth, Alex Hudson. This is the seat that Shama Sawant is not rerunning. I moderated this debate. They both did a very, very good job, but you see there, Hollingsworth leading right now, 58-42%. Does that surprise you?
At this point, given where we've seen the first 2 come out, I don't think I'm that surprised. In general, we see the candidates that are identified as being the more centrist of the 2 generally having their best showing on election night itself. We can generally use the Seattle Times and the Stranger as sort of a proxy for how who's lining up on the more progressive or the more centrist wing of the Democratic Party here. And the fact that I think we see the more centrist candidates leading right now is something in some cases should be a little concerning for the progressives, but isn't entirely surprising.
Let's take a look at District 4. That's another open seat, Ron Davis and Maritza Rivera. And we have some of the results coming in there. That is where, again, we said Alex Peterson's not running for re-election. More than a 10-point spread here with 53% of the vote in.
So for here, it looks like Davis is actually running a little bit ahead of where I would expected him to land initially relative to the 3rd district. The 3rd district and the 4th district have sort of similar constructions, but in both you have sort of a homeowner versus renter dynamic. In general, we've seen the renters having an edge in 3rd district and the homeowners having an edge in the 4th district.
I'm going to ask you that question when we get to the end of this too, because I'm curious, you know, with all the themes
Peel
that we've
that
had,
back.
what you're thinking about this. Let's move on through the rest of these and just kind of get a bigger picture with District 5. That's with Kathy Moore and Christiana Obi-Sumner, and you see there Moore at this point has a pretty commanding lead. That's half the vote in. That's going to be obviously a pretty tough one to make up at this point.
Yeah, I think that will be a lead that size, I think, will be a real challenge to come up. The votes that come in after Election Day generally wind up bringing in more progressive votes than more centrist votes. We call it the blue shift. But the blue shift hasn't ever made up a 40% gap.
Right. District 6 covers Fremont, Ballard, Green Lake, Magnolia neighborhoods, and here are the results there. So 51% to 49%, that's really close. That's virtually a tie at this point. Is that what you're expecting?
I might have expected Strauss to start out a little bit ahead, but given what we've seen in the other districts so far, this should be about what we would expect. Again, the more centrist affiliated candidate coming out with a slight lead, showing probably a little bit better turnout among the homeowners in
We'll
Seattle.
be keeping an eye on that
And
one.
Strauss is the incumbent, so
Yeah.
we'll have to really watch this one closely.
That was
but
negligible
that's
at this point. Yeah, that's still 57.
All but a tie.
And then District 7's that's Andrew Lewis and Robert Kettle. That was looks like a 12-point primary difference in there. And Lewis had the lead in the primary. Again, a lot of these are going against what we saw in the primary. This has only got 40% in, but that's another 12-point lead for the challenger right now. What's that telling you when you look at all these races?
You read my mind.
Yeah.
Well, one thing it's telling us is that since we're seeing it across all the districts, that we are seeing a certain sort of dissatisfaction perhaps with the progressive movement here in Seattle among voters.
Why do you think that is?
I think part of it has to do with the tension that we've seen on the council over the last few years. Part of it could be driven by disappointment with some of the choices they made, like over the debate around whether or not to move to gross misdemeanors for drug possession and stuff like that. Part of it could be targeting them in general over the 2020, 2021 police issues that related to defunding the police. And part of it could be connected to how voters in general are feeling about where the city is heading economically.
We're going to go to Connor Board, our reporter who is with the Tanya Wu campaign. I believe that Connor has Tanya with her. This is a race that at least the early returns show that Tanya Wu is leading. Connor, are you there? Well, we are looking at Tanya Wu. If we can show the results very quickly while they get her ready to talk with us, or maybe we can hear her.
Yeah, if we can, I don't know if we can bring that graphic back right there. There you go.
54%
from District 2. We just got the first results, and tell me what those results show for you.
I'm excited and I'm humbled. It shows that I'm in the lead, but I know we have a lot more ballots to be counted, and we won't know final results for another week. But I'm excited.
I believe it said 54%, correct?
I think so, yes. Yes, I think it shows that our message is resonating with people here in South Seattle and that people are ready for a change.
And what was your main message to people through this campaign process?
Well, my priorities were public safety, homelessness, and housing, and messaging was, bringing it back down to the neighborhoods, bringing it back down, and listening to our communities and the people, and really trying to find solutions together.
And just how are you feeling with that right now? Like you said, there's still more votes to be counted, but how are you feeling being ahead right now on election night?
I'm overwhelmed. I was a nervous wreck all day, learning that this was the moment after a whole year, and so I'm excited, and I know that things could change in the next week, but I am hopeful and very honored and humbled.
And then I guess what are your hopes going forward over the next few days and the next few weeks, Tanya?
I hope I hope we maintain our lead and that that our messaging is getting through, and I'm just excited, and so I'm very happy, and I'm really honored to be here amongst all my friends and family here to support me, and for all of District 2 has been supporting and listening and contributing, so I'm so thankful.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tanya.
We're going to keep watching this race very closely. Again, Tanya Wu with 54% of the vote, Tammy Morales 46% with 48% of the votes in at this point. We wanted to get to the race for King County Council District 8, expected to be another close one. This is a race that could further change the makeup of the city council. The current at-large council member, Teresa Mosqueda, running for King County Council, and she is facing, as you see here, Sophia Aragon, and it is another one where the margin is so close it's virtually a tie. If Mosqueda wins, the Seattle City Council would then have to appoint her replacement, further changing the makeup of the council. What do you make of these results?
I think these are good results for Mosqueda. I think that this would be where she would hope to be on election night. And this is the first candidate I think we've seen that we would affiliate with the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party that has been on top. And if she's getting results like that tonight, I think she could walk away feeling pretty confident.
Are we going to have 8? Are we going to have 8 new city council members? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not telling you that, but I am saying
so?
we're going to see. I don't think we're going to wind up with 8 new members of the city council, but I do think we're going to see maybe a little bit
6
more,
or 7.
a little bit more turnover than we might have been expecting.
You were talking about sort of this Seattle process and maybe people leaning more into that because of not liking the functioning that they've seen with the council previously. Talk more about that.
Well, I think part of the tension that we're seeing in the city itself is that there's a lot of disagreement about how we need to tackle these really big issues. And some of the disagreements over how we should tackle the issues have spilled over into what we really contested visions being played out in media or in other debates, where the candidates have not been able to agree, or at least publicly not been able to agree on a direction that we need to take the city.
And then things don't get done. So then we still have these issues of homelessness and housing and the budget issue, et cetera.
We've seen it over the last couple of years. There's been a lot of backtracking when the council takes an action, like with the Amazon tax, with the decision over whether or not to criminalize drug possession. The council will make a move and then it will step back. Mm-hmm. It's having the debate in the public, and in general, Seattle politics has been one where the debate has always been held in private, and then in public we make a unified show.
Joyce mentioned a couple of these real fast, but when you talk about public safety, homelessness, public drug use, affordable housing, also police accountability. We watched that pendulum swing quite a bit the last few years, and it feels like maybe that's swinging back a bit, like it's correcting itself to a degree. Is that how you would characterize it?
I think in politics at almost any level, we do see voters tending to switch from one side to another after a particular faction holds power for a few years. I think we've seen an accelerated turnout rate in city politics in particular since 2010, and especially since 2015. When the council had its first big turnover after we moved from the all at-large system to the district system.
We want to get to a few more results and then get your reaction. We want to highlight Seattle's $970 million housing levy set to expire at the end of the year. The city says the funding will create more than 3,000 new affordable homes for renters and people looking to buy. It's going to also fund services to help prevent homelessness. And if passed, residents with homes valued at $800,000 would pay about $360 a year, about $30 a month. And right now, it is passing, being approved by 66% to 34%.
I know we focused a lot on Seattle and King County at this point, but we obviously have to get to other parts of Western Washington. Pierce County, the results are starting to come in now, a couple of the big races there. One is the controversial initiative aimed at strengthening renters' rights in Tacoma, a bond in Puyallup to build a new police station and jail, and then there's a massive bond for the Fife School District to build a new high school. This is the Tacoma initiative, and this one's a little complicated. Initiative 1, which would change the city's rental market. Right now, you see it's being rejected 51% to 48%. And this one, they already made some adjustments. The city made some adjustments to the law that took effect this year that gave more renters rights. But then this other one was Initiative 1 was put on the ballot, and basically that was going to strengthen it even more.
Expand it.
It was a
really.
little confusing because if this gets rejected, you still have what the city passed, which is stronger than it was a year ago.
Let's talk about what's going on in Puyallup. Voters are weighing in on a $76 million bond that would allow the city to build a new police station and jail under one roof. And right now, it's pretty close, but being rejected 52% to 48%. The department says it needs more space because the original building was intended to hold about 20 police staff, and currently 95 employees work at that department. So we are watching that one closely. And
then the Fife School District is asking voters to approve a $204 million bond to build a new high school. This bond needs a supermajority to pass. That's 60%. Who would need to approve it. Right now, it's only getting 52%, so that's only 1% of the votes in at this point. So they have not counted a whole lot there. I'm not going to say how that's leaning at this point with that many votes in. District leaders say the current school is sorely outdated. The high school has nearly 50 exterior doors and 7 exit gates, which district leaders say makes it hard to secure. If that's approved, a home valued at $300,000 would cost a taxpayer about $17 a month. You've also got South Kitsap School District asking voters to approve a $271 million bond that would help replace 5 different schools there. This bond, again, needs a supermajority. That one is not even getting 50% at this point. So they've got some work to do. That one's already got half the votes in, so that's going to be tough to pass there. That district, by the way, says voters have not passed a school bond in 35 years. The last 8, and it's looking like 9 attempts have all failed. The superintendent says the schools they want to replace are not accessible for all students. Some of the schools have no air conditioning, safety upgrades are needed, and the list there goes on.
Although it's pretty close, so that could flip. Let's talk about the race for Snohomish County Sheriff. It has been a very expensive one. Combined, these two have spent about $400,000 on their campaigns, and it is expected to be close as well. Do we have no results in yet? There we are. 52, they just came in at this moment. 52, this is very close. Susanna Johnson with 52%, Adam Fortney with 48%. Let's tell you a little bit more about this. So Adam Fortney is the current sheriff, and we talked about his challenger who spent 30 years with the sheriff's office. She retired briefly before joining the Bothell Police Department as a deputy chief, and she now wants Fortney's job right now. Again, Fortney slightly behind, 48% to 42%.
Trying to run through some of these numbers a little faster. In Whatcom County, there are 2 initiatives on the ballot that could raise the minimum wage to give renters more protection. City minimum wage right now passing with 55% of the vote. 64% of the vote is in at this point. And then Initiative 1 would raise the city's Well, I guess that was the minimum wage. This is the rental relocation assistance. It's also being approved with 58% of the vote right now. In Bellingham, voters are also weighing in on expanding, well, this is the protection for voters' rights. Again, that one is passing at this point. Also tracking more than a dozen mayoral races in 10 counties tonight.
Yeah, let's zoom in on what's going on with Whatcom County. In Bellingham, incumbent Seth Fleetwood leading just by almost a tie virtually, with 50.4 to 49.6%. In Snohomish County, the race for mayor expected to be a tight one as well. In Edmonds, incumbent Mike Nelson is running against Mike Rosen. If we just wait for a second, maybe those numbers will pop in. You might remember in the primary, Mike Rosen won by just 47 votes in the primary. We'll come back to that if those numbers come in. And again, we're waiting for the Arlington mayor numbers to come in as well, still tallying them. But in Edgewood mayor, Tyrone Christofferson and Dave Olson, you can see Olson is ahead by almost 20 percentage points with 41% of the vote in there.
Waiting for a few more of these. Okay. Olympia Mayor Dante Payne and David Ross squaring off there. Payne has 67% of the vote, 44% counted at this point. That's going to be a tough margin to overcome. And
let's see if we have Chelan County numbers in. Incumbent Carl Floria and Rich Brinkman, with Carl Floria ahead by 54% to 46%.
Run through a few more. Do we have the numbers for them? Some of them we don't have. Well, we have the numbers, but it doesn't say what percentage the vote is in. Steve Sexton there in Burlington ahead of Joe DeGloria, 57 to 43%.
Yeah, less than 1,000 votes counted so far in there. In that district. So not too many votes in here, and same with this race. So just the votes just now being counted, 805 votes, 564 votes, still a lot of the vote to be counted for Mayor of Sedro-Woolley. So we are taking a quick look at all of the numbers. I think, do we have Spokane? We don't have Spokane. So we've been watching some of these numbers come in. Of course, they are just now, some of them just being tallied. We're going to have all of the results as they keep coming in on King 5 News on Kong at 9:10, and of course
that's why we started King County, because they dropped the votes first, followed by Pierce County, get to there, and the smaller ones take a little bit to drop. We'll get more of those numbers tomorrow, but I think when we look back at this, and want to take time to thank you very much for coming in
Patrick,
tonight. Before we forget, what's your one big takeaway tonight?
I think our one big takeaway is that voters in Seattle, at least right now, seem to be indicating they're not happy with the direction the council has been taking so far. And whether or not we see incumbents return, whether or not we see more progressives get on the council, they're sending a message that they want a different style of politics in Seattle.
Do you think the new style of politics and this new makeup of the council, however it shakes up, is going to be good for Mayor Harrell and what he's hoping to do with the city, or work against what he's trying to do? What's your take on that?
I think, given the leads that we're seeing now, I think we're seeing voters in Seattle give Mayor Harrell more of an endorsement than a warning.
I feel like he's been trying to work slowly, but anytime you have a ship going one way, you try to turn around, it doesn't go the other way, right? It takes a bit, and it looks like he's been working behind the scenes. I think he has people who don't live in Seattle, people who come here for concerts or games or just to walk the waterfront. I think everybody is seeing change. It takes a while for that change to happen. And I mean, there are so many different issues the city has right now. There's not one solution for anything.
No, any sort of metropolitan politics is going to be complex.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it's going to boil down to those nuts and bolts that we've been returning to again. Housing is the basis of basically every other issue that you're going to run into in Seattle. When housing is unaffordable, that's going to push people in the streets, that's going to increase crime, that's going to increase drug use, and that's going to lead to a decrease in the quality of life that people feel like they have in the city.
It does appear that it depends on how things shake out, but we likely will have a diverse city council as well in this city.
It looks that way. It looks like that we'll have a lot of new voices, some voices representing different communities, but also representing different parts of the city that haven't had as loud a voice speaking for them.
And how important do you think that is?
I think that will be possibly the biggest change, because the people who are going to get elected are going to want to look after the constituencies that put them over the top. And that means different voices are going to be being represented in the City Council Chamber Hall.
It's so early with half the vote in. I wish we had all of the results right now, but we're going to keep counting the votes. We can't thank you enough for spending the evening with us to break this down and explain to us what it could mean for
We
the
could
city.
go through this for another hour. We talked a lot about Seattle because of the dynamics in the city, and we didn't get some of the time to get some of the others. But thank you so much, Patrick.
It's been my
from
pleasure.
Seattle University coming in and helping us work through all these numbers tonight.
Our coverage will continue on King 5 News at 9, 10, and 11, the city council races, and so much more. Thank you so much for watching and for up-to-the-minute results. Please stay tuned. We'll have all of the numbers from across Western Washington. And of course, the results first thing in the morning. Good night, everybody.